Grab your black turtlenecks, light up a gauloise. We're about to get into the world of Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher who made existentialism cool, angst intellectually respectable. So order yourself a café au lait, find a cozy corner, a Parisian cafe, or just on your couch, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about existence. Because by the end of this philosophical rendezvous, you're going to have a clear and concise understanding of the man who taught us that existence precedes essence and that hell is other people, particularly when they lean their seat back on an airplane. So the early years, from precocious Parisian to phenomenology phenom. Born in 1905 in Paris, where else, Jean-Paul Charles Émile Sartre came into the world with a bang, or at least with a very serious expression. Young Jean-Paul was a bookworm from the start, devouring books as if they were croissants. Legend has it, by age 9, he was already penning adventure novels. Move over Harry Potter, Sartre was the original boy wonder of the literary world. And Sartre's early life was marked by tragedy and intellect. His father died when he was only 15 months old, leaving him to be raised by his mother and grandfather. And so it's sort of like the universe was setting him up for a life of philosophical brooding right from the get-go. And despite his small stature and cross eyes, which later inspired his famous line, "I am not handsome, I am not nice, but I am free." Young Sartre was a force to be reckoned with intellectually. He attended one of the more prestigious universities in France where he met his lifelong companion and fellow philosopher. Put in the chat if you know who it is. And it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship and a whole lot of philosophical debates over coffee and, what else, cigarettes. In 1943, smack in the middle of World War II, he drops his philosophical bombshell, Being and Nothingness. It's like he looked at the chaos of war and thought, you know what this situation needs? A 722-page treatise on ontology and phenomenology. And so here are some of the key concepts that you're going to encounter in the book. First, this is the big one, existence precedes essence. This is his philosophical power move, the foundation of his entire system. He's saying, listen up everyone, you exist first, then you create your essence through actions and choices. So he's like hosting the ultimate reality show, keeping up with the existentialists. And then the second piece to this was radical freedom. He argues that we are condemned to be free. It's like he's telling us, congrats, you have total freedom. Now deal with the crushing responsibility that comes with that. Thanks, Sartre, really. And then the third piece was bad faith. This is Sartre's way of saying, he's kind of calling us out for our self-deception. He's like saying, okay, listen, stop pretending you're a waiter or just a student. You're a free being, choose to play that role. It's kind of like the philosophical equivalent of your mom telling you to stop pretending and actually clean your room. And then for the look, Sartre describes how the gaze of others objectifies us and makes us aware of our own subjectivity. It's like he's explaining why we feel so awkward when someone catches us singing in the car at a red light. And this work was so dense and complex that even Sartre himself later admitted he had trouble understanding parts of it. It's like he created the philosophical equivalent of Inception, and it's his mind-bending journey that kind of leaves you questioning reality and reaching for some aspirin. So after he kind of lands that heavyweight punch of being and nothingness, he decides to drop a more accessible track for the masses. So in 1945, he gave a lecture titled Existentialism Is a Humanism, later published as an essay. It's like he's saying, okay, let me give you a radio-friendly version of my philosophy and try not to have an existential crisis while dancing to it. So some of the key ideas we're going to find in that is first, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. He kind of doubles down on the idea that we're created free and we make ourselves through our choices. He's the original you do you guy, but with more philosophical depth and fewer Instagram hashtags. And then the second piece was man is condemned to be free. Here, he explains that our freedom is not a gift, but it's a burden we must bear. He's telling us with great power comes great responsibility, but you don't get spider powers, you just get existential angst. And then third is famous line, hell is other people. This is actually from Sartre's play No Exit. This is where it gets kind of explained. It's not that Sartre hated people. Well, maybe some. It's about how others' perceptions of us can trap us in predefined roles. And so he's kind of pretty much describing every single high school. And this work became his greatest hit, making existentialism a household name and inspiring angsty teenagers for generations to come. So move over, pop stars philosophy is having its moment in the spotlight. Take that, Beatles. Sartre wasn't just a one-trick pony. In 1938, he wrote Nausea, his first novel describing his life, describing the life of a historian who became increasingly Guess what? Disgusted with existence. It's like Sartre wrote the ultimate emo anthem before emo was even a thing.
I can be romantic. I'm actually emo.
And then 1943, we have The Flies, which is a play retelling the Greek myth of Precedes, but with an existential twist. So Sartre was saying, you know what Greek tragedy needs? More freedom and responsibility. And then later on, he has The Age of Reason, the first book in his Road to Freedom trilogy. Think Lord of the Rings, but for existentialism. And then Critique of Dialectic Reason. This is his attempt to reconcile existentialism with Marxism. He's trying to create the ultimate leftist philosophy supergroup. So who was the man behind the philosophy? What was his human side like? While we often think of Sartre as this kind of serious, chain-smoking intellectual, he had his moments of levity and humanity too. So here are some fun anecdotes that you might not know about Jean-Paul Sartre. First, he is the Nobel Prize rebel. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1964, but refused it, saying a writer should not allow himself to be turned into an institution. He was the original too cool for school philosopher. I bet he loved Pink Floyd. Mescaline mishap in 1936, he decided to experiment with it, and he started having hallucinations for a book on the imagination. He ended up being followed around by lobsters for years afterwards in his hallucinations. It's like he accidentally stumbled into a Salvador Dali painting and he couldn't find his way out. And then 3, the caffeinated philosopher. He was known for his incredible consumption of coffee and cigarettes. He once said, "Coffee is the bitter anguish of the intellect, tobacco is the sweet despair of the body." He was trying to live the live fast and die young lifestyle, but more philosophy and less rock and roll. And then the political activist. Despite his intellectual pursuits, he was deeply involved in political activism, participated in protests, signed manifestos, and even got arrested during the 1968 student riots. It's like he decided, you know what, being a famous philosopher, it's not exciting enough, I want to be a revolutionary too. So what is his lasting impact? Sartre's influence on philosophy, literature, and also popular culture, it's hard to overstate. He didn't just write about existentialism, he lived it, sort of becoming the poster boy for a whole philosophical movement. In philosophy, Sartre's ideas about freedom, responsibility, and the human condition, they continue to be debated and discussed. His emphasis on individual choices and authenticity, it has influenced fields ranging from psychology all the way to political theory. And in literature, his novels and plays, they helped establish existentialism as a literary as well as a philosophical movement. And his idea that literature should be engaged, dealing with real-world issues and promoting social change, that's going to influence and has continued to influence generations to come. Perhaps his greatest legacy is how he brought philosophical ideas into the public sphere. He made existentialism cool, turning complex philosophical concepts into topics of discussion in cafes and classrooms. So he was the rock star philosopher, bringing philosophy to the masses with a side of French charm and a lot of cigarette smoke. And his ideas about freedom and responsibility, they continue to resonate in our modern world. In an age of social media and constant connectivity, his warnings about the gaze of others and the trap of inauthentic living seems more relevant than ever. It's almost like he foresaw the Instagram era and decided to warn us about it 70 years in advance. And his concept of engaged literature, the idea that writers have the responsibility to address the issues of their time, again, it continues to influence debates about the role of art and literature in society. It's sort of like he was telling us, with great writing comes great responsibility and great freedom and angst. So the next time you're feeling the weight of existence, questioning your place in the universe, or just trying to decide what to have for lunch, well, go ahead and spare an old thought for Jean-Paul. He may have lived in the mid-20th century, but his ideas about freedom, responsibility, the human condition, they continue to challenge and inspire us today. And if all else fails, buy yourself a nice black turtleneck.